7 principles of design are not just about making your artwork look beautiful or prettier than someone else's. They can do things like make sure that your artwork is balanced. They can make sure your artwork catches the viewer's eye. So let's learn about it. Stick around until the end. I have an extra 8th principle. No, I'm just kidding. They told me on YouTube I'm supposed to do that, but I don't know. There is no 8th principle. Hello everyone and welcome to my palace. Yes. Real palace, thank you very much. No video tricks used. Today we're going to be learning about the principles of design, which are things that artists have used for a really long time to make things like this, this, and this, but also people use it to make things like this, this, and that. Let's everybody make sure that we're paying attention because this is important stuff that goes into how people design things in order to make them look right. Balance can be either symmetrical or asymmetrical. So over here we have an example of what's called symmetrical balance. When Leonardo da Vinci painted this painting, The Last Supper, he balanced everything by planning it ahead of time, having everything triangulated, everything divided up. You can see in this diagram that I have over here, all the different connecting lines and how he made sure that everything was even from this side of the table to that side of the table. Obviously, there's a central figure who's also the central figure of the story. So he's using balance to sort of make sure that you understand who the main guy and what this whole story is all about. Everybody's kind of reaching towards the center guy at the table. You probably know who he is. So over here you have an example of asymmetrical balance, which means that if you put the stuff that's on the opposite sides on scales, it wouldn't necessarily be exactly the same like the other painting that we looked at. But in this one, it feels balanced when you look at it. And the way that he balanced it, he has this, the big spiral in the sky, the mountain range balanced off by that quiet village down there. And you notice, even though it's not exactly the same amount of stuff, it still feels even. It doesn't feel like there's only one place that we need to look at. He's doing a good job of giving you a full story, but not needing it to be symmetrically balanced. And number 2. Using elements of art to make them stand out from each other. So you're either going with a rough and a smooth texture, or the most common version of contrast, of course, is dark and light. And we're going to use that a lot in our drawings. It makes things look a lot better if it's not all kind of middle gray. If there's really dark darks and there's really light lights in there too, it really makes it pop. This is a painting called The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Vermeer. And he used an easy trick of contrast that you can use in your stuff. It's called The Girl with the Pearl Earring. He wanted that pearl earring to be the thing that pops out. So what did he do? He made sure that it was the lightest thing in the whole painting versus all that dark in the background. So here's another example from Leonardo da Vinci. I promise we'll get to more modern artists later. I'm just dealing with some obvious examples right now. This painting is called The Mona Lisa. Have you ever heard of it before? Probably. Do you know why you heard of it? Probably not. You probably think it's because it's the best painting ever. It's not. It's because some dude stole it and then they recovered it and then that made whatever. So in the Mona Lisa, you see kind of that same trick. Again, the most common and the one that I'm going to ask you to use if you're in my class this year is light and dark. That's the most common contrast there is. And in this one, the face of Mona Lisa is very light and she kind of pops out at you against that dark background. Emphasis, where you're telling somebody where you want them to focus, not by walking up to them while they're standing in front of your artwork and telling them to look there, but by doing something that draws their attention to it, kind of like this. Oh, yay, look at that. This painting is called Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali. It's a very famous painting. A lot of people think it's called Melting Clocks. It's not, but don't worry. We're going to talk about the clocks. Melting clocks are all soft and curvy and they kind of contrast. They stand out from everything else because everything else has kind of edges and this is the one soft melty thing. So you can use texture to make things have contrast and pop out as well. Obviously they pop out or else everybody in the whole world would not think that this was called Melting Clock. This painting is another example of contrast and it is American Gothic by an artist called Grant Wood. You've probably seen it before. You've seen people doing imitations of it before that are probably stupid, maybe something like this. And this one is about as straightforward as it can get. The emphasis is on the central characters that the painting is of. The background is nice and plain. There's a lot of details on the characters standing in the foreground. They're right in the middle. Everything about it says, look at these two people. This is a painting of these two people. And that's what they did. You can do that with your artwork too. You don't have to use tricks all the time. You can just put it in the middle of the page and make the background kind of softer and less detailed than it, and it will stand out. That will create emphasis for sure. Movement as a principle of art is when you use different things in the artwork to move the person's eye a certain way, the viewer's eye a certain way through the picture that you have. It's almost like giving them a hidden guideline or map to work their way through your artwork. And a lot of great artworks do it. We're going to talk about it. All right, this is a painting by Gerhard Richter, and this is from a series that he took from trains with a slowed down camera so that everything would blur. Obviously, there is clear movement in this. Not only does it look like the artist was moving while they did the artwork, and that is implied with the streakiness or the smudginess of the blurriness of the whole thing, but also you kind of, as you look at it, you focus on the main subject. If you're me, this is what I do. I focus on the main subject and my eyes kind of trail off into that speed blur going off behind. Gerhard Richter, one of my favorite artists of all time, is using movement in his artwork. All right, this artist is called Fragonard. I hope I said that right. I don't know who it is. But the painting's called The Swing. I thought it was a great example of movement, just to show you that you don't have to have it look like the artist is moving like Gerhard Richter did. You could also have it look like things are moving in the still image. And you're creating that movement. That's fake. The girl on the swing is not moving, her dress is not flowing. You're looking at a still image and your brain is creating that movement because of what the artist did. And that is what we're talking about when we talk about principles of design. They're kind of tricks that you play with your artwork on the viewer. Let's keep going, learn about some more principles. All right, so this is one that we use a lot in my classes, and it's called pattern. It's when you repeat elements or objects in order to create a design. A couple quick tips and tricks on patterns that I learned over the years teaching middle school. If you're going to repeat circles over and over again, make sure that they're all the same size. Or if it goes big, little, make sure the little ones are all the same size as the little ones and the big ones are all the same size as the big ones. And the other thing is spacing. If you're going to go a pattern of X dash, make sure that there's an equal space in between each one each time. If you just do those two things, you make the parts of your pattern the same size, you make the spaces in between your elements the same size as well, then your pattern is going to look a million times better than it normally does. That's a little inside tip. You're welcome. Subscribe. All right, so this is one of my favorite paintings of all time. It's called The Great Wave by Hokusai, and it's about when people are trying to go out and fish to earn a living, even though there's horrible storms, but they got to do what they got to do. And he uses pattern in this, the waves going back, the way that the water is treated. All those sorts of things are repeating, and they're even, and it creates a design as it continues to repeat. This is a mosaic from a Roman villa. Do I need to tell you where the pattern is? Can you find the pattern in that? I don't know why the only thing I saw were Roman villas, because look at how good Islam is at that stuff. Rhythm. So rhythm can get a little confusing, but it's really sort of a mixture of two of the ones that we already learned, which is pattern and movement, because what you're doing is you're creating movement by repeating an element of some kind in your artwork. And here's some examples. Let's go back to the painting by Salvador Dali called Persistence of Memory. Not a lot of things have much more flow than this painting does here. It's got melting stuff, it repeats. It really is sort of a perfect example of rhythm where you have flowy things. They don't have to be flowy, but it helps. You have things that clearly have a directional impact on the viewer's eye, and those things are repeating. So that's a perfect example of rhythm. This is composition number 8 by Vasily Kandinsky. Kandinsky is a watercolor artist that middle schoolers love. They feel like they can't do realism yet, but they can do something like this. It's a great way to put rhythm into your artwork. You just kind of take some things that you can make, like triangles, shapes, curvy lines, different kinds of elements of art. You take the things that you can make, and you use the things that you can make in some sort of organization, composition that turns into a work of art that it can have energy, it can have emotion. It's called abstract expressionism, and it's the type of painting that I do when I'm painting in my own studio at home. All right, so unity is the most difficult one to define and nail down, but I'm going to try my best. The way that all of the parts of your artwork are coming together and working together, not working against each other, and it's the thing that makes the artwork feel finally complete. How many times have you taken an artwork to your art teacher, thought you were done, they told you that you weren't? That's them searching for unity because you haven't learned how to search for it yet. You're welcome. All right, this is a painting called Guernica, and it's a painting by a maybe the most famous artist of all time. Super famous, mega famous. So he repeats colors, he repeats shapes, he repeats themes. Everything is sort of broken up into chunks the way that stays with his style. I think keeping with your style is another way for your artwork to have unity. And he brings the elements through from here and there. There's stories about him working on this painting for almost a year, trying to get it right before he felt like he was done. And that's one of the greatest artists in the world. So don't feel bad. You got to go back to your desk a few times and try. And that's it. Now you got 7 principles that you can use to make all your artworks better. Use them like a checklist. Do you have all those things in all your artworks? The elements I've taught about before. The elements are the basic things that you really use to make the artwork. These are the thinking tools that you apply to the artwork that you're making in order to make it the best artwork that it can be.